Consider how your air conditioning unit works. You set it for 72 degrees. It samples the air to find out what the temperature is and feeds that information into the loop. Whenever the temperature is higher than the 72-degree target, the unit comes on and begins to cool the air. It goes round and round this loop until the target is reached, at which point it turns the cooling cycle off. That's a feedback loop, going only one direction, and it's the most efficient and cost-effective way to handle the process. It would be ridiculous to set the air conditioner to come on every 3 hours and run for 22 minutes, regardless of the temperature of the air, and it would be ridiculous to hook it up to a random number generator so that it would come on whenever the number 17 turned up and run until the number 11 was generated. It's equally ridiculous to go into language interactions with the idea that you'll say only certain pre-established or random things, regardless of what you may hear. Language does not work like that. People do sometimes try to go into language interactions with their minds made up, having decided in advance what they will say. Perhaps when this happens most often between parents and teen-aged children, when the weary parent only has to see the teenager's mouth open before saying, whatever it is, the answer is no. But even that is an example of a feedback loop. The only thing unusual about it is that the data the parent is using to adjust the response is data from the past and the hypothetical future rather than the present. What is said is a response to things the parent has already heard the teenager so far too many times and is sure the teenager will say again. And that imaginary data is being fed back into the language system and responded to with a determined no. Still a feedback loop, although a pathetic and inadequate one. It never happens that people choose an arbitrary sentence, such as, 6 people will fit into a telephone booth, and doggedly say only that in response to the speech of others. Nor do people ever say sentences entirely at random, as in this hypothetical dialogue. Speaker A, $24 is too much money. Speaker B, it rains oftener on the railroad tracks. Speaker A, yes, but the quality of mercy is not strained. Speaker B, well, it takes 7 people to change a light bulb. Clearly, one of the rules by which we communicate says something roughly like, when a conversation is going on, each utterance must be based in some way on the utterances that come before it. There are also associated rules for breaking out of the loop without causing our conversational partners to decide we don't know how to talk. We learn to say things like, pardon me for changing the subject, as a way of demonstrating that we know the rule we intend to break. The difference between the feedback loop in cooling systems and the linguistic feedback loop is that in language, the feedback goes in both directions. I hear what you say, and I select what I will say on the basis of what I heard you say. You listen to my response, and you select what you will say on the basis of what you have heard. We maintain this interactive feedback loop for as long as we are carrying on the conversation, with the information being fed back at both ends of the loop. The more skillfully we do that, the more successful our communication is going to be. The more data you are able to extract from the language you hear, the more information you are able to obtain from words and body language about what is actually meant. The better you will be able to choose a response that is effective and efficient. And the more skilled you are at this feedback process, the better you will be at saying things that obtain the responses you want in return. If you are only listening to other people with half an ear, if you aren't observing their body language competently, you aren't getting enough feedback information. And without that information, you can't construct effective responses, which means that the communication taking place will be much less satisfactory than it could be, and it ought to be. Should you care about that? Indeed, you should, because your success depends upon it. Current books on business and management, The Passion for Excellence will do for an example, state very clearly what part language plays in your efforts towards success. Excuse me. You have to get out and communicate with everyone at every level, customers and clients, colleagues and staff, suppliers, contractors, and administrators, everyone involved in your enterprise. These books will tell you that you must talk well, that you must listen well, and that you must build empathy and rapport and trust and mutual respect. They make an airtight case for the success of such methods over the traditional, it's a jungle out there and only the toughest and meanest survive methods. But although language is the only tool available for talking and listening and rapport building, they don't tell you how to use language to accomplish these goals. They take it for granted that you have nothing to work with but gut feeling, vague hunches, and good guesses. And they recommend 3 mechanisms based only on intuition. The first one, select people to be involved in your enterprise who are already highly skilled at communication, at building rapport, etc. The second one, use these natural good communicators as models, putting them in strategic locations where they will serve as an inspiration to everyone around them. And the third one, allow the people around the good communicators some time to catch the ability that the good communicators had the blind luck to be born with. Encourage them in every way possible, and then, if they turn out to be immune, fire them. This is a lot like throwing people into the water with one good swimmer as their model, in the hope that they'll learn to swim. If they don't, letting them drown. It's based on the common belief that superb language skills can't be taught, that they are something that you either know or you don't, that you have to either be born with such skills or pick them up as you go along, and that they are so mysterious that it's impossible to subject them to systematic analysis in the way that other skills are. These are serious errors, and it's time they were abandoned. The most basic skill underlying successful communication is that of establishing and maintaining the interactive feedback loop by talking, by listening, and by interpreting and generating body language. This book will teach you how to do all of those things and do them well, building upon your internalized knowledge base and your natural competence. The interactive language feedback loop is easiest to produce and maintain, and works most effectively when the people who are trying to communicate with each other can be said to be syntonic. This term comes from early music theory and from telegraphy, where it is used to refer to 2 radio sets so well tuned with respect to one another that they can be used for the effective and efficient transmission of information. Obviously, you can't set up a feedback loop between 2 radios or 2 people when they are trying to transmit on totally different frequencies. The system for getting in tune with people you are interacting with and using a shared channel for communication with them is called syntonics, defined in the Gentle Art framework as a science of language harmony. Language as traffic. Scenario 6. Jack Harrington sat at the cafeteria table, picking at his lunch, listening to his two colleagues, nodding now and then, and wishing he could figure out a way to get a word in edgewise. "The nerve of him," the woman was saying. "Calling you a failure. I mean, everybody heard him, Jack, and they haven't talked about anything else for 3 days. And then Martin called him in. 5 minutes later, the two of them were carrying on like hockey players. And you're not a failure at all, I mean." "Karen, wait just a minute. I want to make my point here." And then they were both talking at once, the two of them, Karen and Fred. If it hadn't been his alleged failure that they were discussing in public or dissecting in public, he would almost have enjoyed watching them. Neither one had the remotest idea how to carry on a conversation. They didn't do conversations. They did monologues. And heaven help you if you needed to get anything across to either one of them in a hurry. Jack went back to poking his macaroni salad with a fork, wondering whether he should make one more try at explaining how little difference it made to him that a turkey, like Tom Lee, had called him a failure, or just walk off and leave Karen and Fred to wear themselves out on their own. By now, you will be well aware that Jack Harrington is lacking in one crucial communication skill, that of getting his fair share of the turns in a conversation. You have seen him fail at that task twice, once in his altercation with the verbally abusive Tom Lee, and again in scenario 6, where he is run over by two monologists. His problem is a common one, sometimes found in people whose status makes its appearance a surprise. Britain's Margaret Thatcher is the most obvious example. Thatcher is a powerful and dominating woman who insisted on running the show, but she is forever being interrupted, not because people don't want to hear what she has to say, but because they think, due to the false signals that she gives them, that she's through talking and ready to yield the floor. Jack does all right when he's involved in a placid exchange of utterances, but at the first sign of opposition he gives up, falls silent, and simply sets it out. This is why he's not going to go any higher than his current position as assistant manager for marketing development at Meta Corporation. People know him to be an intelligent and capable man, but they also know that they can't count on him in the tight spots. Language, interactions, when properly done, are well-regulated systems of traffic, just as you have rules in your internalized grammar that tell you what constitutes a possible word of English or a possible sentence of English. You have traffic rules that specify who gets to talk, for how long, and about what. Those rules, like most other rules, can be broken, but there are rules about that too. No one would accept as an English conversation an episode in which 3 people all talked simultaneously for 10 minutes, or even one in which everyone had to observe 5 minutes of silence at the end of each sentence. We might accept such things as theater or a psychological experiment, but not valid language interactions. To get safely through the linguistic intersections, you need at least the following 5 skills. 1. The ability to get a turn to speak and to hold on to it for as long as the rules allow. 2. The ability to propose a topic to be talked about and to support and maintain that topic. 3. The ability to pass on the conversation turn to another person of your choice. 4. The ability to spot the signals that mean you have been selected as the next person to talk. And the last one, the ability to stop people who are determined to interfere in this process. You also need to know the meta rules that specify how this system of traffic control works, so that you can plan several turns ahead and set up strategies for putting your skills to use. This is not just a matter of etiquette. Manners decree that anyone who hogs the floor is ignorant and rude, but we all know people who can speak at great length without anyone present feeling imposed upon. We know other people who can only say half a dozen words before we begin to feel that they've talked too long. Manners are all about what is nice. The traffic rules of your grammar have nothing to do with being nice. They have to do with the promotion of successful communication, and they are based not on courtesy, but on linguistics. Your own real-world experience proves this beyond all doubt. For example, if you think that it's your turn to talk, you're not going to be listening to what the other speaker is saying, and communication will fail. Or, if it's your turn to talk and everyone waiting for you to begin, but you've missed your cue, you won't be saying anything, and communication will fail. Or, if you aren't able to set up your topic with sufficient strength to win and hold people's attention, they won't be able to listen, and communication will fail. You do have all the skills necessary for maneuvering through the verbal traffic, but you may not be using them very well. And you may be at a loss for ways to improve the situation. That can be fixed, and this book will tell you how. Now, we are approaching the end of the chapter, and it is time for me to tell you that the prominent position of the word failure in each of the 4 short scenarios was no accident. If you go over the scenarios again, you will observe that although everyone involved is pronouncing the same word failure, the speakers do not all mean the same thing when they make the sequence of English sounds. Suppose that you and I were talking about planes, and the only meaning for plane in your internal grammar's dictionary was the one appropriate